Hi, everyone. I'm Mandy Hutchinson. Welcome to another segment of You're the Expert. We do have these mostly on our podcast, but sometimes some longer episodes of the segment on the YouTube and Twitch channels. So join us today for a new episode, and we hope you enjoy it.
Hi, my name's Paul Booth. I'm a professor of communication at DePaul University, and I've been a board game fan and a board game player for many, many years. I remember being a kid and playing Scrabble and Trivial Pursuit and all those kind of classic games with my family. As I grew up, I played kind of more complicated games, and now I really enjoy kind of heavy Euro games. I really enjoy cooperative games. I have ongoing collaborative games with different groups of friends. Board gaming has been a major part of my life, but it wasn't always a part of my academic life. And so what I want to talk to you about today is how I've integrated board games into my life as a professor, both in the classroom and in my own research. I teach in the media and popular culture area of our college, which means that everyone in my department focuses on how popular culture affects who we are as people and what we do in our lives. My particular focus is on audiences and how do audiences use popular culture in their everyday life. I like to tell my students, I like to tell their parents that for the majority of the time that you're in college, you're going to go to classes that teach you what you do 8 hours a day when you're working. But there are 16 other hours in the day, and that's where my classes come in. I'm going to teach you things about the TV you watch, about the games you play, about the fan activities that you participate in. I'm going to teach you classes about social media and that when we think we're wasting time scrolling through endless TikToks, we're actually doing something very important. And instead of looking at whether something is good or bad or putting a value judgment on something, I like my classes and I like in my research to look at the effects of what our popular culture does and why our popular culture is so important. So one of the things that I've spent a lot of my time researching and a lot of my time looking at are things that I like, are things that are part of my popular culture consumption. And what that means, of course, is that board games have become integrated into almost everything I've done in the classroom. In my most recent book, Board Games as Media, I've spent a lot of time thinking about how we might examine board games and why board games are so important today. And what I came to realize is that we spend a lot of time in our culture and in our classrooms and in our communities talking about film and talking about television and talking about podcasts and talking about all these media forms that are influencing what we do. But we don't spend very much time talking about board games in the same way. So wouldn't it be interesting, wouldn't it be useful, wouldn't it be exciting just to think for a few pages about what would happen if we examined board games the same way we examined film, we examined television, and we examined literature? What might we discover about our culture from the board games it produces? What might we discover about our board games from the cultures from which they come? And so my focus over the past few years has been looking at how board games not only influence what we do in our everyday lives, but also how our everyday lives influence the type of board games that get made. It may seem self-evident if you're a full-time board gamer like myself, and if you're listening to this podcast, then you probably are. So the arguments that I discovered while writing Board Games as Media probably seem pretty self-evident. But I think they're important nevertheless. The first is that Unlike film or television or books or comics or any other form of media, board games, the actual physical object of the board game, is only half the text. And here text is, of course, anything we can study. Text is anything created, right? And a board game's board, its cards, its pieces, the meeples, the different things you can do in the game, this is only half of what a game is. Because until someone actually plays the game, until it is unfurled on the table in front of you and people are interacting with it, it's just pieces in a box. It doesn't have any meaning. And so this is the second argument, the second point that I came up with, is that games don't actually come into existence without players. Now, the object still exists. The creator of that object has still made it. I have a picture up here of Scythe, right? So Scythe still exists as a board game, but it's not a media text until someone starts playing it, until someone starts interacting with it, which means unlike all these other media texts which exist out in the world, whether somebody is listening to it or not, a board game's media experience only happens in the moment, which means board games are constantly evolving. And like other media texts, they reflect aspects of the culture that made them. But unlike other media texts, they also are fluid. They change with time. We can watch a movie from the past and reinterpret it and rethink about it. I can watch a movie from the 80s and think, man, that has not aged very well. Those jokes are not as funny as they used to be, because our culture has evolved. We've evolved as people. But that media text hasn't evolved. Our reaction to it has. But when we're playing a board game from the past, when we're playing a board game from even the past couple of years, the actual intimate moment that we're playing that game, that moment is different. And that is our media text. What board games bring to media is immediacy, is a feeling of being in the moment, and it's a feeling of being part of something happening right now. Nowhere is this more obvious than when I teach my class, Board Games as Media. I've been teaching this class at DePaul University for 6 years, and one of the things that is exciting and thrilling and terrifying about this class is that I can bring in games that students have never seen before. And when they sit down to play that game, their experience of it, that immediate mediated experience of the game that they are having in that moment, is going to be vastly different than anything I could have anticipated. And it's not because of what the game itself says. The cards, the pieces, the board, that will be the same every year. But what the students bring to the game, their cultural background, their experiences, their understanding of the world, changes the game every time. I can show them Catan, and it could be the exact same Catan that we played in 2019. It could be the exact same Catan that I played in 2002. But their mediated experience, their media of that game, right? The board game as media is going to be vastly different because they have different ideas now about colonization and settling and things that have become part of our culture, ideas and identities that just weren't talked about as much in the past. Their idea of Catan is different, and that means Catan is different, which means that as media texts, board games are always reflecting what's happening in the world today. Let me give you a better example. I'm sure you've all sat down, you've unwrapped your game, you've taken the plastic off, you've opened it up, and there greeting you are little multicolored cubes. Almost every game has cubes. We've got cubes of different colors, cubes of different sizes. They're plastic, they're wood, they're cubes. They're super popular. But what is a cube? In Pandemic, a cube is a disease. In Agricola, cubes are animals. Cubes are whatever the game needs them to be. And that only happens when a player uses that cube in that particular way. In fact, if you take the exact same cube from one game and put it in another game, that cube magically changes. It changes from disease to animal to pollution to money to life to heart to energy. That cube is always going to be a cube. It's only how we look at the cube, it's how we think of the cube that changes. And this is what makes board games so unique as media texts. They require an audience to be there actively working to make the meaning at the same time. So what does this all mean? Why is this important? This thing that you know instinctively and I know instinctively, but why is this important for people who don't play board games? Well, one of the things that I did in this book was interview 1,000 people to find out why they liked games. And again, you know this, you're an avid listener to this podcast, you're a hardcore game player, you love thinking about games, games are on the forefront of your mind. But for the vast majority of people who don't like playing games or don't even know about games, they might think that people like playing games because they want to win. And sure, some people do. Some people really like winning. But in my survey of over 1,000 people, what I found more than anything is that the vast majority of people played games to be with other people, to think about things differently, to make friends, and because it's fun. And I think if we look back at our own lives and our own experiences playing games, that makes a lot of sense. We play a lot of games. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. It's always nice to win, but that may not be why we play. We play because of what we get out of the game, that experience, that moment of being with other people. And that's why board games are also a unique media form. We love watching movies with people, we love watching TV shows with people, but we can only create media with someone else if that media is also something ongoing, is also something that doesn't exist until we play a part in it. We are actively creating something with others when we play a board game. And in some ways, that's the most important thing we can be doing. Board games are not frivolous. They're not a waste of time. They're not something we do when we can't do anything else. Board games are a purposeful act of creation all the time, every time, that means something to the people who are playing it. They're also how we make sense of the world. Play, this concept of play, is about pushing against boundaries. When we play with something, we see how far it can go. We play with boundaries. We are in a rigid structure and we try and find a way to make something different out of it. Play is how we make sense of our world. We push, and when we're children, we push against the boundaries to see how far we can go, to see what is acceptable. As adults, I think we find ourselves too much in rigid structures, too much in boundaries, and we lose that sense of freedom that play brings us. Board games bring that back to us. They help us make sense of the world because they give us something to push back against. I don't mean breaking the rules, although we often do that in board games as well. I mean trying to find a solution to a problem that is staring you in the face. How do I score that one extra point? How do I make use of that one loophole that I found in the game? This is what board games teach us, and it's something that no other media text does. how can we push against the boundaries of our world to make it more what we want? I started getting really into thinking about board games in this new way after I started to see how popular board games had become in our popular culture. And it really hit home for me when I was watching Orphan Black. Fantastic TV show. I hope you've seen it. If you haven't, check it out. And they play tons of board games in Orphan Black. The characters love getting together. They're playing Rune Wars in this picture. But what was really exciting to me when I was watching an episode was that they were playing Gloomhaven, which is still probably my favorite game. The game I've definitely played the most. And seeing that connection allowed me to see those characters in a new way and allowed me to understand that show in a new way. And so that really jump-started my thinking on this, that if board games have the ability to connect me with fictional characters, what can they do in the real world? And yes, they can reflect aspects of the culture that created them. I think it's really important that board games today are coming out with gender-neutral language, or really coming out with an awareness of who the audience is, trying to make games more friendly to people of all backgrounds. But board games also reflect player reactions. They reflect the way that we as individuals understand the world around us. And by melding those two things, by seeing how our representation of culture and our reaction to culture collide in that board game text, board games become bigger than the box. They become part of the world around us. One of the truly fabulous things I've been able to do with this research is become series editor on a book series from the University of Michigan Press called the Tabletop Gaming Series. That's me in the middle there, my co-editor, Aaron Trammell, and then our publishing editor at the press, Haley Winkle. And together the three of us are putting out a series of books, all from different authors, all from different backgrounds, each book focusing on a particular game. So, for instance, there's a book on Catan, there's a book on Vampire the Masquerade, there's a book on Blood Bowl. All of these books coming out in the same way that you can buy a book on your favorite movie or a book on your favorite TV show. We're really excited that we're going to have books on all of our favorite games that don't just tell us a history of the game, but analyze it, that discuss it in terms of its cultural and social significance. So look for this series if you're interested in this sort of study of games. And if you're interested in writing one of these, feel free to get in touch, because we're always looking for new authors, and you don't have to be an academic to publish one of these. I'll leave you with one last example. And it's another fandom, something that I've been part of for many years. It's a fandom I've had longer than board games. It's a fandom I've had longer than any other fandom. And it's probably something that's been in my life longer than almost anything else, and that's Doctor Who. I used to watch it in the early 80s when I was just a child, sitting on the couch with my father, taping it off of American PBS stations. And I wasn't thinking about Doctor Who in any sort of game-like way when I was a child, but the more I studied board games as media, the more I started seeing media as games. And I think Doctor Who is a prime example. I think Doctor Who has a sort of philosophy of playfulness. There's a game-like nature to Doctor Who that becomes obvious when you start thinking of board games as media and media as games. Because of Doctor Who's endlessness, its ability to constantly reinvent itself with new doctors, new showrunners, new ideas undergirding it. Because of its constant genre bending and its shape-shifting, Doctor Who becomes game-like. Every episode is different. It's a chance to re-explore what Doctor Who means. The classic joke, right, that the worst Doctor Who you've ever seen is the one you're watching right now. is exactly what I'm talking about. Doctor Who is always reinventing itself. It's always something new. And it deepens our understanding of Doctor Who to see it as a game. Not to see it as unserious, not to see it as frivolous, but to see it as a game with its audience. That it's doing something new and we're reacting to it. This sort of ludic fandom, ludic meaning game-like, helps us understand our long-form media texts. It helps us understand our reaction to them, that we play with them. We push against their boundaries. We see what they're capable of, and in turn, what we're capable of. I want to thank you for sticking with me, listening to me rant for 20 minutes about why I think board games are media and how that has affected my kind of academic journey at DePaul for the past almost 20 years. I also want to thank Mandy and Suzanne for letting me come on the show and talk about this. It's obviously a passion of mine. It's something that has been very important to me, and it has been a real eye-opening experience to see that something I enjoy, something that I do with my friends, something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, is important to lots of people. That board gaming is not just a frivolous, time-wasty hobby, but it has real implications. And it allows us not only to see how we can have an effect on the world, but also how we can come together to solve problems and to try and make the world a better place. Now, maybe I'm being a bit lofty. Maybe my goals here are a bit too high. My expectations too much for what board games can do. But I do believe that playing board games is important. I do believe that joining with other people to play is important. I think that we spend so much of our life separated today. We spend so much of our life on our own little plane, our own social media universes, our own individual ways of seeing the world. And when we come together to create something new, to create a world in front of us, whether that's a world like Catan or Gloomhaven or any of the thousands or millions that you could create, we're doing something important. We're joining with others to make something new. And I think in some ways that's the most important thing we can do. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate it. And hey, my email's up there. Get in touch if you want to talk more about games.
Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of You're the Expert. We look forward to seeing you for our next episode. Thanks. Have a wonderful day. Bye.